They shot a general at dawn in Belgrade, February 26, 1947. A firing squad, not a hanging. That detail matters. Alexander Löhr stood 61 years old in a Yugoslav prison yard, wearing the face of a man who'd commanded armies across the Balkans, who'd signed surrender documents, who'd escaped once already, who knew exactly what was coming. The bullets arrived at 6:30 in the morning, 10 days after sentencing, 10 days to sit in a cell and count the hours until sunrise. But you already know he died. What you don't know is why Yugoslavia needed him dead so badly they hunted him twice. What you don't know is what he did that turned his name into evidence. What you don't know is that between May 9th, 1945, and that February morning, Löhr lived through one of the strangest captures in the war's final days. A surrender, an escape, a manhunt, and a trial that pulled together bombing raids, burned villages, executed prisoners, and a direct order to ignore Germany's unconditional surrender. The Yugoslavs built a case with dates, with locations, with body counts, and when they were done, Löhr was the only German general sentenced to die by firing squad instead of rope. The distinction mattered. 6 other German officers tried alongside him, all sentenced to death by hanging. Generalleutnants Josef Kübler, Fritz Neidholt, Johann Fortner, Generalmajor Adalbert Lonscher, Oberst Günther Tribukeit, SS Brigadeführer August Schmiedober, all hanged. But the court gave Löhr the firing squad, the method reserved for soldiers, not criminals, soldiers. The Yugoslav military tribunal made a statement with that choice. You commanded armies, you get a soldier's death, but you still die. If you value documented history and factual war crimes, accountability like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using primary sources from Jozo Tomasevic's War and Revolution in Yugoslavia, 1941 to 1945, published by Stanford University Press in 2001. And Detlef Vogel's Operation Strafgericht, published in Kriegsverbrechen im 20. Jahrhundert by Primus Verlag in 2001. Deep archival research combining Yugoslav military court documents, German Wehrmacht reports, and post-war testimony. These aren't secondary summaries. These are the trial transcripts and operational orders. Now back to the information. May 9th, 1945, Topolšica, Slovenia, a spa town 12 kilometers from Velenje. General Löhr, commanding Army Group E and all German forces in Southeast Europe, signed an unconditional surrender document. The war was over. Hitler dead. Berlin fallen. But Löhr had received his orders, full capitulation, and he'd decided otherwise. He wanted his troops in Austria, British custody, not Yugoslav hands, so he signed at Topolšica. Then tried negotiating passage. The 14th Slovene Division refused. Passage denied. Löhr gave orders to cease fighting. The troops disobeyed. Then Löhr did something almost no general at his level attempted. He escaped. 4 days, an intense manhunt across northern Slovenia. Partisan units tracking a 60-year-old Austrian general through hostile territory. Löhr countermanded his surrender order, tried to continue the breakout toward Austria. On May 13th, they caught him again, recaptured. This time there was no negotiation. The Yugoslavs imprisoned him on May 15th. Trial date set. The count began. Born May 20th, 1885, Târnu Severin at Kingdom of Romania. Father Friedrich Löhr, Danube steamship captain, former hospital ship officer from the Russo-Turkish War. Mother Catherine Hyman, Ark, Ukrainian nurse, daughter of a Jewish-Russian military doctor from Odessa. The marriage produced 3 sons. Alexander spoke German, Russian, French, Romanian from childhood. The family language was French because his father barely spoke Russian, and his mother struggled with German. Eastern Orthodox by faith through his mother. Educated at the Teresian Military Academy in Vienna. Graduated August 18th, 1906, with a rating of very good. Volunteered immediately. Served as platoon commander in a pioneer battalion of the 85th Infantry Regiment. Austro-Hungarian Army, World War I. Lieutenant Colonel by 1921. Löhr witnessed the Potemkin Mutiny in late June 1905 while visiting relatives in Odessa. 17 years old, standing on the docks watching Russian sailors rebel. That image stayed with him. Mutiny, breakdown of order, the consequences of lost control. He carried that lesson through every command. Between 1921 and 1934, he held multiple staff positions in the Austrian military. Director of the Air Force in the Federal Army's ministry. Building Austria's air power from almost nothing. When the small Austrian Air Force formed, Löhr became its commander in 1934. He held that position until March 15th, 1938. The Anschluss, Austria absorbed into Nazi Germany. Löhr, already a Hitler supporter from the beginning, exhorted his men to join the Nazi Party. He transferred seamlessly to the Luftwaffe, Generalleutnant, commander of Luftwaffe forces in Austria, one of only 3 Austrians who eventually rose to the rank of Generaloberst in the German armed forces. The other 2, Erhard Raus and Lothar Rendulic, Austrian officers who climbed to the top of the Wehrmacht. Hitler trusted them, believed they understood the Balkans, believed Austrian imperial history gave them insight. He was right about one thing. They understood how to control territory, how to crush resistance, how to make regions quiet. 1934, commander of the small Austrian Air Force, held it until the Anschluss, March 15th. 1938, transferred to the Luftwaffe as Generalleutnant, commander of Luftwaffe forces in Austria. Then things accelerated. May 1939 to June 1942, commander of Luftflotte 4, Air Fleet 4. This formation bombed Warsaw in September 1939. Then Belgrade, April 1941, Operation Retribution, Unternehmen Strafgericht, punishment. Adolf Hitler ordered it after a Yugoslav coup overthrew the government that signed the Tripartite Pact. On March 27th, Heis, 1941, demonstrations erupted in Belgrade, masses in the streets chanting "Better war than the pact, better in the grave than a slave." Hitler was enraged, ordered the destruction of Yugoslavia. Hermann Göring transferred about 500 fighter and bomber aircraft from France and northern Germany to airfields near the Yugoslav border on March 27th and 28th. Löhr, commanding Luftflotte 4, allocated these aircraft to attack Belgrade in waves, day and night. He issued orders March 31st. Hitler confirmed April 5th, but Löhr developed a tactic: incendiary bombs first, start fires across the city, then send night bombers, let the fires guide the second wave to targets. April 6th, 1941, 6:30 in the morning. Palm Sunday, the bombs fell. 4 waves that day. The Royal Yugoslav Air Force had 77 modern fighters. 3 days before the attack, Major Vladimir Kren defected to the Germans, handed over locations of military assets, divulged Air Force codes. Belgrade was defenseless. The city had 370,000 residents. Most were asleep when the first wave hit. No air raid sirens, no warning, just bombs, high explosive and incendiary mixed. The Royal Palace and the city center, targeted. War Ministry, targeted. Military headquarters, targeted. Central Post Office, targeted. Telegraph Office, targeted. Passenger and goods railway stations, targeted. Power stations, targeted. Barracks, targeted. But the fires didn't discriminate. They spread. Residential areas in the center and northwest burned. About 30 Junkers. 88 bombers took off from Romania around 4 in the afternoon for a second run. They strafed refugees fleeing the destroyed city, people running with whatever they could carry, bombers diving low, machine guns firing, terror bombing at its most literal. 218.5 tons of bombs dropped, 10 to 14% incendiaries, 7 aerial mines, 20 to 25% of the city destroyed. The official casualty figure released by occupation authorities soon after was 2,271 killed. Other sources say 5,000 to 10,000. Historian Jozo Tomasevic writes that careful post-war investigations suggest 3,000 to 4,000 dead is realistic, but some witnesses, like journalist William Stevenson, claimed around 24,000 corpses were recovered from ruins, with many never found. The National Library of Serbia at Kosančićev Vanek Street, built in 1832, completely destroyed. 8 centuries of published Serbian cultural heritage burned. 714 buildings completely destroyed, 1,188 severely damaged, 6,826 partially destroyed. Italian war correspondent Curzio Malaparte was in Belgrade during the raid. He described the ground shaking as if it were an earthquake, houses hitting each other, terrible crash of collapsing walls, windows falling on sidewalks. In the pauses between bombing runs, devastating, terrified screams, lamentations, moans, curses, the roar of a distraught people. Several hundred civilians were killed in the yard of the Ascension Church on the first day. Several hundred more died when a bomb shelter in Karageorgiev Park took a direct hit. Sealed tomb, no survivors. 3,500 to 4,000 Jews were forced by Germans to collect rubble. Unexploded bombs are still found in the 21st century. Belgrade capitulated April 13th. Yugoslavia surrendered April 17th. 375,000 Yugoslav soldiers became prisoners of war. The bombing paralyzed communications between Yugoslav military and headquarters, contributed decisively to the rapid collapse of Yugoslav resistance. That was the point. Terror, paralysis, collapse. Löhr was promoted to Colonel General effective May 3rd, 1941, July 12th. 1942, he took command of the 12th Army. August 1st, 1942, Wehrmacht commander in Southeast Europe. December 28th, 1942, Commander-in-Chief, Southeast Europe, Army Group E. This role controlled every subordinate command across the region, commanding general in Serbia, military commanders in Salonika Aegean, southern Greece, Crete, naval commander Aegean Sea, German plenipotentiary in the independent state of Croatia, commanding general of German troops in Croatia, military attaché in Sofia, Bulgaria. Hitler chose Löhr because he was Austrian, believed Austrians understood the Balkans better since the Austrian Empire included those territories. Löhr told German ambassador Siegfried Kascha that Hitler appointed him to make the Balkans quiet, even if it was the quiet of the cemetery. Like many Austrians, Löhr had contempt for what he called the non-historic peoples of the Balkans, especially the Serbs. He regarded the independent state of Croatia as something of a joke. Despite its name, he frequently disregarded Croatian sovereignty claims, rode roughshod over NDH officials. Edmund Glaze-Horstenau warned him this was damaging support for the NDH among Croats. Löhr ignored the warnings. On August 29th, after 1942, while visiting Belgrade, Löhr met General Milan Nedic, Prime Minister of the puppet government of National Salvation in Serbia. Nedic told him the government had almost no power. Contrary to promises made when he formed it in August 1941, Löhr didn't care. The puppet governments existed to provide cover, to take blame, to supply collaborators, not to wield actual authority. September 1942, Löhr toured the Balkans, found the situation to his disliking. In Serbia, the SS, Wehrmacht, Foreign Office, and four-year plan organization operated alongside one another and sometimes against each other. The SS operated as law unto itself, brooked no interference from army military police. But at least in Serbia, Löhr reported, "There are no more Jews." That sentence in his report, clinical, matter-of-fact, genocidal bureaucracy in 11 words. Relations with Italians were difficult. The Regio Esercito occupied Dalmatia, Montenegro, part of Slovenia, much of Greece, made truces with royalist Chetniks. Relations between Italians and Ustasha were extremely bad. Italians had annexed Croatian-majority Dalmatia, and the Italians, Löhr complained, were failing to play their part in the final solution to the Jewish question. In a report dated October 1st, 1942, co-signed by Löhr, Kascha, and Glaze-Horstenau, they accused Italians of protecting Jews in occupation zones, implementation of Jewish laws hindered by Italian officials. In coastal zones, especially Mostar, Dubrovnik, Crikvenica, many Jews stood under Italian protection. Others helped over the border to Italian Dalmatia or Italy. Thus, Jews gained help, continued treasonous activities, especially those directed against German aims. Löhr complained about Jews receiving protection. His job was eliminating them. The Italian mercy obstructed German efficiency. 1943. The offensives: Operation Weiss, Fall Weiss, Case White, 4th Enemy Offensive, January 20th to late March 1943. Hitler ordered Armed Forces Commander Southeast Europe, General Oberst Alexander Löhr, to crush resistance in Yugoslavia on December 16th, 1942. Concerned about Allied landing in the Balkans, partisan interference with German operations and resource extraction, timber, copper, bauxite. January 8th, Löhr met Mario Rowata, commander of the 2nd Italian Army in Zagreb, devised detailed plan, 3 stages. Weiss 1 targeted partisan areas: Lika, Kordun, Banija, Kazinska Krajina, Grmech. Started January 20th, lasted until February 25th. Weiss 2 focused on partisans southeast of Bihać Republic: Drvar, Glamoch, Livno, Jajce, Ključ. The Axis mustered 10 divisions, 90,000 troops, 12 air squadrons. Chetnik auxiliaries, 12,000 to 15,000 men, worked with Italians. Goal: destroy the Central Command. The Central Committee of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, capture the bulk of partisan units around Supreme Headquarters. Result: partisan command secured, hospitals saved, continued operations possible, but the price: approximately 12,500 partisans dead. Another 2,506 captured. Wounded unknown. Axis suffered 6,500 to 8,500 casualties. Dead, wounded, missing. About 1,900 to 2,400 Germans, around 2,600 Italians, 600 Croats, 2,000 to 3,000 Chetniks. Strategic victory for Josip Broz Tito. He escaped the trap. Then Operation Schwarz, Fall Schwarz, Case Black, 5th Enemy Offensive, May 15th to June 16th, 1943. Immediately followed Weiss. The Germans wanted to finish what Case White started, eliminate the central partisan formations, capture Tito, Sujeska River area, southeastern Bosnia, the Axis rallied 127,000 land troops, German, Italian, Croatian, Bulgarian, plus over 300 airplanes. May 14th, surprise raid. Germans captured Chetniks in their sleep, disarmed them. German field commanders appealed to reconsider. Chetniks proved reliable allies against partisans, but High Command refused. Juro Juricic and other Chetniks interned in prison camps in Greece and Poland. Rest sent to labor battalions. Offensive started May 15th, but the real assault began May 20th after troop concentration. Axis troops encircled partisans in Durmitor mountain area between Tara and Piva rivers, northern Montenegro, assaulted them over 1 month. Bleak Arjmanek, inhospitable terrain, mountains, gorges, limited roads. Winter hadn't fully released its grip. Partisans suffered severely, lack of food, medical supplies. They were protecting wounded, carrying hospital equipment, fighting while retreating, starving while marching. In accordance with Hitler's express instruction, Löhr ordered merciless annihilation of partisans, exemplary brutality to civilians. The order used that language, merciless, exemplary, not just defeat the enemy, destroy them, terrify the population, leave examples. German frontline units advanced to tighten encirclement. Partisans maneuvered to find weak points in the cordon. The Battle of Sujeska, remembered in Yugoslavia as the hardest fight of the war. Tito himself was nearly captured. German troops came within meters of partisan headquarters, within shooting distance. But partisans broke through, escaped, survived. General Rudolf Lüders, commanding 15th Mountain Corps, admitted in his final report that partisans were well organized, skillfully led, possessed combat morale so high it was hard to believe. He wrote they were tough and fanatical fighters, adroit at night fighting, rain fighting, fog fighting, close quarters fighting, not guerrillas, soldiers, disciplined, effective, dangerous. The battle marked a turning point. Partisan control of Yugoslavia shifted. After Sujeska, Italy signed an armistice with allies, effective September 9th, 1943. German forces in Yugoslavia never again mustered enough troops for an offensive of similar size. They tried to capture Tito at Drvar in May 1944 during Operation Russelsprung, Knight's Leap. It seems failed again. By 1945, partisans controlled most of Yugoslavia. But Löhr's operations had another dimension. Most prisoners taken during the 4th and 5th offensives, including the wounded, were executed on the spot, not combat deaths, executions. During anti-partisan operations 1943, under Löhr's command, hostages were killed, villages burned, orders issued, increased the burning of villages and killing of people. One report from a divisional commander to Löhr described partisans but ended with cold instructions. Between September 19th and October 23rd, 1943, 131 prisoners, including women, shot or hanged in Kosovo. This wasn't an isolated unit. This was command policy. Löhr oversaw it. On October 4th, 1943, during campaigns to destroy Greek resistance, the Andartes, Löhr sent a message to the commander of the 1st Panzer Division, wanted the most severe measures against any signs of hostility, warned that officers showing any softness toward Greeks would face court-martial. In another order about the war against Andartes, Löhr stated, "This is a fight to the death without any halfway house. Ideas of peace-loving people's heroism are misguided. Precious German blood is at stake. Fight to the death. No mercy. No quarter. Death. Like all Wehrmacht commanders." Löhr received Hitler's commando order of October 18th, 1942, standing orders to execute all commandos taken prisoner, even in uniform. Löhr implemented it. His forces followed it. Commandos captured. Commandos shot. No trials. No prisoner of war status. Just execution. The 7th SS Volunteer Mountain Division, Prince Eugen, operated under Löhr's overall command in Yugoslavia. Notorious for brutality, anti-partisan operations that became massacres, village destructions that became genocides, reprisal ratios for every German killed, 50 to 100 civilians executed, sometimes more. Löhr knew. He received reports. He signed off on operations. He didn't stop it. He encouraged it. Make the Balkans quiet, even if it's the quiet of the cemetery. August Schmidhuber commanded Prince Eugen from January 20th, 1944 to May 8th, 1945. Before that, from May 1944, he commanded the 21st Waffen Mountain Division Skanderbeg, Albanian volunteers, operated in Kosovo, became notorious for looting, atrocities against unarmed civilians, especially ethnic Serbs. In May 1944, Skanderbeg participated in roundup and deportation of Jews from Kosovo, sent to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. Almost all perished. Schmidhuber issued orders to increase burning of villages, killing of people. Between September 19th and October 23rd, 131 National Liberation Movement prisoners, including women, shot or hanged in Kosovo. The division used retributive hangings as response to sabotage. After 6 months, following mass desertions, poor combat record. History of atrocities. Heinrich Himmler ordered division disbanded November 1st, 1944. Schmidhuber blamed Albanian soldiers. Said during attack, they go only as far as they find something to steal or sack. All under Löhr's command. All reported up the chain. All documented. All later used as evidence. Then the war ended. May 8th, 1945. Germany's unconditional surrender. Löhr received the orders. Full capitulation. No negotiation. But Löhr directed his forces to break out toward Austria. Refused to comply. On May 9th, at Topolshica, he signed partial surrender for Army Group E, then attempted to negotiate passage for his troops. About 150,000 men refused, prevailed upon to issue ceasefire orders. Troops disobeyed. The 14th Slovene Division captured him. Historian Jozo Tomasevic documents this in War and Revolution in Yugoslavia. Löhr tried negotiating passage for his forces to Austria, to British custody, not Yugoslav. The partisans refused. Löhr issued orders to cease fighting, but his troops, desperate to avoid Yugoslav capture, disobeyed and continued the breakout attempt. Then Löhr escaped, walked away from custody, countermanded his surrender order, attempted to continue commanding the breakout. For 4 days, Yugoslav partisan units hunted him across northern Slovenia. A 60-year-old general fleeing through hostile territory, former commander of hundreds of thousands of troops. Now hunted like anyone else, after intense manhunt, recaptured May 13th. This time no negotiation, no orders issued, no escape possible. Yugoslav forces secured him completely. Imprisoned May 15th, 1945. Trial date scheduled. The Yugoslav government wanted trials, wanted documentation, wanted the world to see evidence, wanted accountability delivered through legal proceedings, not summary executions. Trials first, held until February 26th, 1947. 633 days. The trial, Yugoslav Military Court of the Yugoslav Third Army, Belgrade, started May 15th, 1945, with intensive interrogation. Then formal trial proceedings, charges, war crimes during the bombing of Belgrade, April 1941. War crimes committed during anti-partisan operations, 1943, killing of hostages, burning of villages, disregarding Germany's unconditional surrender. Article 3, Gipsul, Item 3 of the Act on Crimes Against the Nation and the State. Specific law, specific charges, specific evidence requirements. The prosecution presented operational orders with Löhr's signature. Casualty figures from multiple sources. Witness testimony from survivors. Village documentation showing dates of destruction. Wehrmacht operational reports filed during the war. Luftwaffe bombing assessments showing tonnage, targets, methods. Records of prisoner executions. Orders implementing Hitler's commando order. Reports on anti-partisan operations, documentation of hostage-taking, evidence of village burnings. The trial lasted months. Defense argued superior orders, chain of command, Hitler's directives, claimed Löhr had no discretion, no choice, just following orders. The court examined whether Löhr had discretion, whether he could have refused, whether he escalated beyond orders. Found he did. Found he devised tactics. The incendiary first method for Belgrade. Found he issued orders beyond requirements. The merciless annihilation language, the exemplary brutality demands. Found he ignored unconditional surrender, the escape, the countermanded orders, the breakout attempt. Found guilt on all counts. 7 defendants tried together, all found guilty, all sentenced to death. February 16th, 1947. The court sentenced Alexander Löhr to death by firing squad. Co-defendants sentenced alongside him, General Lieutenants Joseph Kübler, Fritz Neidholt, Johann Fortner, General Major Adalbert Lonschar, Oberst Günther Tribukeit, SS Brigadeführer August Schmidhuber. These men received death by hanging. Only Löhr faced the firing squad. The distinction wasn't mercy, it was a statement. General to general, soldier to soldier, military execution for military crimes committed at the command level. But death was death. The method differed. The outcome didn't. Schmidhuber went first. February 19th, 1947, hanged in Belgrade, age 45. Commander of 7th SS Volunteer Mountain Division, Prince Eugen, and 21st Waffen Mountain Division, Skanderbeg. His forces burned villages in Kosovo. Executed prisoners, men, women on his orders. Between September 19th and October 23rd, 131 prisoners shot or hanged, retributive hangings for acts of sabotage, deportations of Jews from Kosovo to Bergen-Belsen. Almost all perished. Schmidhuber's division lasted 6 months before mass desertions. Poor combat record, history of atrocities led Heinrich Himmler to disband it. November 1st, 1944, captured by Red Army at Chile, Slovenia, May 11th, 1945. Turned over to Yugoslav authorities, trial, conviction, execution. 7 days before Löhr, February 26th, 1947, Belgrade, morning, Löhr was brought to the execution site, prison yard, firing squad assembled, 10 soldiers, rifles loaded. Löhr stood 61 years old, career spanning Austro-Hungarian Army, World War I, Austrian Air Force commander 1930s, Luftwaffe, General World War II, commander of Luftflotte 4, commander of 12th Army, commander-in-chief Southeast Europe, Army Group A. From the Teresian Military Academy to a Yugoslav prison yard, from commanding 500,000 troops to standing before 10 rifles. No last statement recorded, no dramatic final words. The execution was procedural, military. At dawn, the volley, Löhr, fell February 26, 1947, 6:30 a.m., 61 years old, buried location unknown. In 1955, members of the Vienna Aero Club installed a memorial plaque in the Vienna Stiftskirche on Maria Hilfer Strasse, military ordinariate. Inscription: for the unforgotten comrade, Colonel General Alexander Löhr. No mention of Belgrade, no mention of the trials, no mention of the thousands dead. But here's the reveal, the thing that reframes everything. Löhr's role in the bombing of Belgrade remains hotly contested even today. Historians Bischoff, Placer, and Stelzelmarks note some sources argue he wasn't in position to oppose Hitler. Others state he'd been partly responsible for the firebombing of Warsaw in September 1939. He knew exactly what incendiary bombs would do to a city, and could have resigned. Löhr had options. He chose the bombs, he chose the tactics. Fires first, then night raids. The National Library burned because someone planned it that way. 3,000 to 4,000 civilians died because someone issued the orders. Löhr signed them. March 31st, 1941, and after Belgrade, after Warsaw, after commanding operations where prisoners were shot on the spot and villages burned on orders, after ignoring unconditional surrender and attempting a breakout that cost more lives, Löhr stood trial. The Yugoslav court examined the evidence, operational records, Wehrmacht reports, casualty figures, village names, dates, signatures. On February 16th, 1947, they found him guilty. 10 days later, a firing squad executed sentence. The only German general to die that way in Yugoslav custody, not hanging, shooting. The method reserved for soldiers, Löhr's pistol, the one confiscated May 13th of 1945 after his recapture, sits in a memorial room at Topolsheka, displayed in the center of a glass cube, symbolizing captured weapons, resistance's ineffective use. The room reconstructs the surrender signing. Visitors can watch a documentary film about the events, 24-hour access, free. The capitulation that ended World War II for Slovenians, signed May 9th, 1945, one of 4 partial German surrenders at war's end. The signature that Löhr tried to countermand, the escape that lasted 4 days, the recapture on May 13th, all documented, all preserved. But if you examine the specific charges, the pattern emerges. Bombing Belgrade, April 6th. 1941, 218.5 tons of bombs, 7 aerial mines, 3,000 to 4,000 dead, National Library destroyed, 20 to 25% of city destroyed. Anti-partisan operations, 1943, hostages killed, villages burned. Prisoners executed, including wounded ice, explicit orders to increase brutality. Disregarding unconditional surrender, May 8th, 1945, attempting breakout, countermanding ceasefire, prolonging fighting after Germany capitulated. 3 categories, 3 time periods. 1 commander, 1 pattern. The 4th and 5th offensives, Case White and Case Black, are studied today as examples of large-scale anti-partisan warfare. 127,000 Axis troops for Case Black alone. Over 300 aircraft. Encirclement in mountainous terrain. Merciless annihilation orders. And the result? Partisans escaped. Tito survived. Partisan movement grew stronger. The offensives failed their primary objective. But the secondary effect, executions, burnings, reprisals, those succeeded. Those left bodies. Those left witnesses. Those built the case. Yugoslav prosecutors didn't charge Löhr with losing battles. They charged him with how he fought them, with the orders he issued, with the methods he approved. Hostages, civilians, wounded prisoners, not combat, murder. Article 3. Item 3 of the Act on Crimes Against the Nation and the State. The law Yugoslavia used was specific, not vague. It covered actions against civilians, hostage-taking, village destruction, refusal to comply with surrender. The court needed evidence. They had Wehrmacht operational reports, Löhr's signature on documents, dates matching village burnings, casualty counts. The defense argued superior orders, chain of command, Hitler's directives. The court examined whether Löhr had discretion, whether he could have refused, whether he escalated beyond orders. The verdict found he did. Guilty on all counts. Death by firing squad. 10 days between sentence and execution. February 16th to February 26th. Löhr knew the date, knew the hour, knew how it would happen. Not hanging, that's what the others got. Firing squad, 10 men. Rifles, dawn, prison yard, 10 days to sit in a cell, 10 days to think about Topolšica, the escape, the recapture, 10 days to think about Belgrade burning, villages in Bosnia burning, prisoners shot, 10 days to think about whether any of it had been worth it. To wonder if resignation was possible back in 1941. 10 days, but here's what the Yugoslavs wanted. Accountability, documentation, public trial. They didn't execute Löhr secretly. They tried him. They presented evidence. They cross-examined. They sentenced based on law. Then they executed him. And they executed him differently. Firing squad, not hanging. Because even in death, there were distinctions. Military execution for military crimes. But death was death. Löhr died at dawn, February 26, 1947. The others hanged. Kubler, Neidholt, Fortner, Lonchar, Tribukait, General Lieutenants, General Major, Oberst, Wehrmacht officers, commanders under Löhr during anti-partisan operations. They issued orders too, burned villages too, executed prisoners too. They hanged. Schmidhuber, SS Brigade Führer, hanged February 19th, 7 days before Löhr, all executed in Belgrade, all convicted by Yugoslav military courts, all buried in unknown locations, and Belgrade rebuilt. The old palace without its cupolas and elaborate entrance gate, the destroyed buildings replaced, the train station repaired, the fortress restored, but the National Library, 8 centuries of Serbian cultural heritage, gone. Some 500 manuscripts, incunabula, rare books, archives, historical documents, burned April 6th, 1941, Löhr's incendiary bombs, fires to guide the night raids. Tactic became ash. Knowledge became ash, but the memory didn't. 76 years later, April 6th, 2017, Belgrade announced plans to turn the National Library ruins into a memorial garden, preserving the foundations, marking what was lost. On April 6th, 2016, 75th anniversary of the bombing, memorial service was held for victims. Serbian Minister for Labor, Employment, Veteran and Social Policy, Aleksandar Vulin, attended. Monument in Zemun commemorating Yugoslav pilots killed during Operation Retribution, inaugurated April 6th, 1997. Designed by sculptor Miodrag Živković, the bombing depicted in films whose Singin' Over There, 1980, Underground, 1995. Miodrag Pavlovic's poem Belgrade, 1941. Serbian-American poet Charles Simic, bombing survivor, wrote cameo appearance about his experiences. The war didn't end. April 17th, 1941, when Yugoslavia surrendered. It continued. Partisan resistance. German reprisals, Italian occupation, Croatian Ustasha, Serbian Chetniks, 4 years of fighting, of offensives, of burned villages and executed prisoners, of Löhr's command, and when Germany surrendered May 8th, 1945, when the fighting finally stopped, the accounting began. Nuremberg trials for major figures, national trials for regional commanders. Yugoslavia tried its occupiers, tried the men who burned Serbian villages, who executed partisan prisoners, who bombed Belgrade, tried them, convicted them, executed them. Löhr wasn't the only one, but he was the highest-ranking Commander-in-Chief Southeast Europe. Army Group E, the man who signed the orders, the man who devised the bombing tactics, the man who, when told to surrender, tried to escape, the man who, when caught, tried again, the man who spent 633 days in Yugoslav custody knowing what was coming. The trial, the verdict, the sentence, the execution, and on February 26, 1947, at 6:30 in the morning, in a prison yard in Belgrade, in the city he'd bombed 6 years earlier, Alexander Löhr faced a firing squad. 10 rifles, 1 volley, done, not hanging, shooting, military execution for the general, but still dead, still executed, still held accountable. The memorial plaque in Vienna says unforgotten comrade. The memorial room in Topolshica shows the surrender he tried to countermand. The monument in Belgrade marks the pilots who died defending against his bombers. The garden where the National Library stood remembers what burned. All these markers, all these memorials, different stories, different perspectives, but one constant. Löhr commanded, Löhr ordered, Löhr executed, and when his turn came, he stood before the rifles. Documents exist, operational reports, Wehrmacht archives, Yugoslav court transcripts, witness testimony, village records, casualty lists, execution orders with signatures, bombing assessments with tonnage and targets, 218.5 tons of bombs, 3,000 to 4,000 dead, 12,500 partisans killed in Case White, 131 prisoners shot or hanged in Kosovo in 5 weeks. Numbers, dates, places, names, evidence. The trial wasn't political theater, it was prosecution. Article 3, Item 3 of the Act on Crimes Against the Nation and the State, specific charges, specific evidence, specific verdict, death, firing squad. February 26th, 1947, carried out at dawn. Löhr fell in the same city he bombed. In the same country he tried to make quiet as a cemetery. The quiet came, but not the way he planned, not with partisan resistance crushed, with German generals executed, with accountability delivered, with the firing squad's volley echoing across the prison yard at sunrise, and that pistol in Topolshica, behind glass, symbolizing captured weapons and ineffective resistance. It's Löhr's, confiscated. May 13th, 1945, 4 days after signing surrender, after escaping, after being caught, his weapon, his final possession before Yugoslav custody, now in a museum, in a memorial, 24-hour access, free admission, the pistol that never fired another shot, the surrender that couldn't be undone, the escape that failed, the general who died at dawn. If you value this documented history and factual accountability, subscribe. Comment from which city you're hearing this from, the sources used, Tomasevic, Vogel, Bischoff, Placer, Stelzelmarks, archived Wehrmacht documents, Yugoslav military court records from 1945 to 1947, published 2001 by Stanford University Press and Primus Verlag, German operational reports, witness testimony, village documentation. These aren't summaries. These are primary sources, trial transcripts, orders with signatures, the documents that convicted, the evidence that sentenced, the facts that killed. Belgrade, 1941, firebombing, 3,000 to 4,000 dead. Warsaw, 1939, firebombing. Thousands dead. Bosnia-Herzegovina, 1943, burned villages, executed prisoners, hostages killed systematically. Kosovo, 1943, 131 prisoners shot or hanged in 5 weeks. Slovenia, May, 1945. Surrender signed, then countermanded. Escape attempted, breakout ordered. Belgrade, February 1947. Trial, conviction, execution, dawn, firing squad, 10 rifles, 1 general, dead at 61. The memorial plaque in Vienna, installed 1955, calls him unforgotten comrade. But Belgrade hasn't forgotten either. Hasn't forgotten the bombs, hasn't forgotten the fires, hasn't forgotten the National Library burning, hasn't forgotten 3,000 to 4,000 dead, hasn't forgotten that April 6th, 1941 was Palm Sunday. Hasn't forgotten that refugees fleeing the destroyed city were strafed by bombers that afternoon. Hasn't forgotten that Jews were forced to clear the rubble. Hasn't forgotten that the man who planned it stood trial, was convicted, was executed. 7 years, April 6th. 1941 to February 26, 1947, Belgrade bombed to Belgrade execution. Operations in between, battles, offensives, burnings, executions, surrender, escape, capture, trial, sentence, death. 7 years from ordering the incendiary bombs to standing before the rifles. From General Oberst, commanding Army Group E, to prisoner in Yugoslav custody. From signing surrender at Topolshica to being shot at dawn in Belgrade. 7 years precisely, 633 days imprisoned. 10 days between sentence and execution. 1 morning, 1 volley, 1 general dead, buried in unknown location, no marker. Just records. And the question historians argue over, whether Löhr could have refused, could have resigned, had discretion, had options, the Yugoslav court decided guilty, death, firing squad, not because he couldn't refuse, because he didn't, not because orders forced him, because he escalated, not because Hitler commanded incendiaries first to guide night bombers, because Löhr devised the tactic, chose the method, issued the orders, signed the documents, and when he stood before the court, the evidence, operational reports, casualty figures, village names, execution orders, bombing assessments convicted him. February 26, 1947, 6:30 a.m., dawn in Belgrade, prison yard. Firing squad assembled, Löhr standing, 61 years old, 4 languages spoken, Theresian Military Academy graduate, Austro-Hungarian Army veteran, Austrian Air Force commander, Luftwaffe general, Colonel General, Commander-in-Chief Southeast Europe, Army Group E, prisoner. Condemned, 10 rifles aimed, 1 command. Volley, Löhr fell, dead before sunrise. Buried location unknown. The war ended May 8, 1945. Löhr died February 26, 1947, 633 days later. But for Belgrade, the war ended that morning, when the general who bombed them fell, when accountability arrived, when the rifles fired, when the prison yard went quiet, when the body was removed, when the sun rose over a city that remembered. The war ended then, not with Germany's surrender, with Yugoslavia's justice, not with Hitler's death, with Löhr's execution, not with liberation, with the firing squad's volley. And that's the answer to why Yugoslavia shot Alexander Löhr. Not hanged, shot, military execution for military crimes, because he commanded, because he ordered, because he devised tactics, because he escalated, because he signed documents, because he ignored surrender, because he escaped and tried again, because the evidence existed, because witnesses testified, because villages named the dead, because Belgrade counted the bodies, because the National Library still smoldered in memory, because justice required accounting, because the court convicted, because the sentence demanded death, because dawn came, because rifles fired, because generals fall like anyone else when the volley arrives. That's why. Not political revenge, legal accountability under Yugoslav law, not mob justice, court proceedings with evidence, testimony, cross-examination, verdict, sentence, trial first, then 10 days waiting, then dawn, then execution, then one general dead in the city he bombed, then quiet,